Hello, everybody. Sit up here, ready for the show. Need to give a big shout out to Mr. Rosa, first in the house in the YouTube versus the Facebook brouhaha that has been coming up. All right. Looking good, looking good. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining. We'll be starting in just a second here. Getting all my stuff ready. Got a big show. Big show. All right. Just about there, folks. Hope you're enjoying the smooth, sultry sounds. It's in order. All right, I think we're ready. Let's do this thing. False start. Had to hit record. Got to do that. All right, here we go. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Uncle Marv's IT Business Podcast, presented by NetAlly. This is the podcast where we help you grow your business better, smarter, and faster. That is the goal, whether you are a solo tech, computer repair shop, managed service provider, IT professional of any kind, anything that we can do to help you run your business, do your networking stuff a little bit better, make a little bit more money. That's what we're trying to do today. So I want to say thank you all for hanging out with me, whether you are watching in the live show, which we've got a few people here, and if you are listening to the audio recording at a later date, or even watching this at a later date. Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness gracious. Alex Farming in the house. Hello, Alex. So I better be good tonight. Vendors are watching. So tonight we are going to just simply talk about one thing. And I had a recent project that I did for a buddy of mine, who actually was somebody who did a lot of work with me over the years. He was running an IT company here in Fort Lauderdale. He and I started about the same time. But he ended up just recently going to work for another MSP. And part of the reason was because I couldn't afford him. But he found himself a good job. He is, I believe, head of the project service team or something to that effect. And he called me up and said, Marv, I'd like to hire you and your tools. And Adam is a guy who over the years has done this as I've accumulated my Fluke / NetScout / NetAlly handheld tools. Adam has called me and said, hey, I need your help in troubleshooting, doing all sorts of things. Well, this time he called me to help him do a network discovery for a client that they were trying to get. And it was a big campus, multiple buildings, and multiple switches, hundreds of devices that they just couldn't really spend the time themselves to do. So I'm going to talk about how I was able to utilize my tools and help him do network discovery and hopefully help them get the business. But at the same time, a little bit of money for me. So if you're really worried about getting these tools, you can actually use them to make good money, not just help you work faster and smarter, but you can utilize them to help you make some money. So we're going to talk about that this evening. I do need to give a quick shout out. Last week, I had posed a question where I was asking for some help in trying to figure out how I was going to use a particular Synology and do some stuff for a client that I wanted to kind of use a mixed drive Synology NAS. I wanted to put some solid state drives in one storage pool and run their file server on, or their domain controller, manage their Active Directory, do all of that, and have that be in a virtual server. That way I didn't have to have a separate domain controller on-prem and the NAS. I could have the NAS do both. And I wanted to see if I could do that with solid state drives on that partition, so it'd be a little speedy, and then just regular storage drives for a second partition, and still have room to grow later on down the road. So I got a couple of responses for that, and I do want to say thank you. Bob actually was the first one to respond, and Bob had sent me actually another suggestion, not anything to do with Synology, but I had mentioned the fact that the reason we weren't looking at a full-blown server is because right now prices are high, inventory is backed up. HP, the last time I spec'd out a server about 2 months ago, it was probably about 50% higher than normal. So the customer needed it and they did it. But some customers are like, well, wait till prices come down. But with the Synology, they're still in stock. I'm able to get stuff there. So Bob had actually recommended a company that I could go and find, actually Dell servers. They're not an HP shop, they're a Dell shop. But I went and looked at the site, Stallard Technologies, and it seems like it's a pretty good site. I don't know if I'll use them, but I will keep them in my pocket. If I ever need Dell servers, or if I decide to make a change and do that, they may be a place to go. So I will have that in the show notes tonight that you can go and look at. And then I had some other folks that responded, and most of them, and rather than going through each of the responses, it pretty much was, yeah, you can do exactly what you want. And I had some people respond and say, yes, we're currently doing that now. I found, I had one person that actually responded that they're actually running multiple virtual machines on a Synology NAS. Now, it is a higher end NAS. It's not one of your 720s or your 920s, the 2 or 4 bay systems. These are the 12 bay systems, the rack mounts with the higher end processors. The one that we were looking at is the dual controller one. I don't know the number off. I think it's the SA3200, which seems to be a perfect model for that, where one controller can handle the one storage pool for the virtual machines. The other controller can be for the storage drives and everything else. So I want to say thank you to the folks that responded to me. I will ask for help again later. All right, after that shout out, we should probably do a big thank you to our sponsors. And of course, I mentioned at the top of the show that we are being presented by NetAlly. They are the #1 ally of network professionals around the world, an industry leader for more than 25 years. Best-in-class tools and software that enable your team to more effectively plan, install, validate, and troubleshoot vitally important wired and wireless networks. And our live show is actually sponsored by Computers Done Right. Computers Done Right is a managed IT services company providing IT support and management in Venice, Florida, right down here where I am. Well, not right here on the other side of the state, and surrounding areas. Not only do they do computer repair, virus removal, they also have website design, social media marketing. So for all your computer repair needs, go to computersdoneright.com. And I want to also shout out to our friends over at MSP Unplugged and remind everybody that this September 16th through the 18th in Chicago, Illinois, they will be putting on another great event called TechCon Unplugged. I'll have the link in the show notes, but you can head over to TechCon Unplugged and have yourself a nice weekend there where you can rub shoulders with other IT professionals and vendors that are there to help you and talk to you one-on-one. They're not sitting behind tables all the time. They're actually in the sessions with us. Those sessions, for the last few years we've done these, have been vendors and technicians standing side by side, providing solutions and tips. And this is a great event put on by the gentlemen over at MSP Unplugged, Paco and Rick. So be sure to sign up for that at techconunplugged.com for the 2022 version of that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our topic, because I don't know how much I will ramble, but I mentioned that I think one of the best things that I have done is went and got myself into the Fluke family. I did this many years ago, and if you have not heard the story, the reason that I got into Fluke was because I got tired of arguing with cable guys about whether something was wrong or not. And at the time, the cable guys that I was calling weren't necessarily the big professional boys. They were, I say guys like me, but they were running cable, but they were coming in with these little, mini testers, kinds that you could, find at Lowe's and Home Depot. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but those can only test so much. And I'm sitting there arguing with them whether a cable's bad, a switch is bad, a computer's bad. And I said, I'm going to go out and spend my own money on my own tools. And that way I can test and know whether things will work or not before calling the cable guy. And I think at the time I spent about $900 on my first tool and actually found a cable that was bad. And it tested more than just the connectivity light, which those, $30, $40, $50 testers where, if the lights blink green, 1 through 8, they think they're good. Well, with the tools I found, they're actually testing connectivity, they're testing speed, and they're verifying connection. And they're going to show whether there's shorts and stuff like that. So to make a long story short, that sold me on getting these tools. Now, over the years, I've gotten many, many tools, and one of which that I have gotten recently is, if you're watching live, I'm holding in my hand the NetAlly Etherscope NXG. And as you can see, it is pretty much a tool that fits in your hand. And I carry this in my bag just about everywhere I go. There are times where I walk into an office and leave it in the car, but for the most part, every time I walk into a network, I'm going to take this with me, because I use it just about every visit to verify what's on the network and to see if anything has changed from the last time I was there. So this helps me keep my current networks up to date, up to speed. And if I see anything, I know that, hey, I got to address it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I'm also going to talk about the Domotz box. Our friends over at Domotz, if you don't know, have a little network monitoring device that you can put onto a network. And it doesn't have to be the box. You can actually download the software and put it on other devices, such as the Synology. And you can have it run on your network and do several things there. So let me tell you how I use this Etherscope in this manner. I mentioned earlier that my buddy Adam called me and said, I wanted to rent you and your tools. And they had a prospect, we'll say, that was looking at multiple companies to come in and fix problems in their network. But they were a pretty big, and I'm going to say campus without talking about the name of the company or what they're doing. So it was a campus with several buildings and several switches, and they couldn't, really go through and identify what was currently really on the network. Adam knew I had this, called me out there, so we agreed upon a price, and I went out and did a network discovery audit for them. And we're going to talk about what I did. The first thing I want to say in terms of tips for keeping your customer calm or your prospect calm, one of the things that I think people get nervous about is when you say, hey, we need to come in and look at your network, and they think that you're going to come in and you're going to want passwords to everything, you're going to want to touch everything, you're going to want to see all of this. And one of the things that I like about this tool is I can tell the customer, look, you don't have to worry about things. All we're going to do is plug in our device and see what's on your network. We don't need a password. That's probably the first thing that puts them at ease, that you can let them know we don't need your password. We don't know if we're going to be doing business with you. We hope that we do, but I want to assure you that we're not going to come in and take a peek at your data and have you worry about what we're going to do with that. So we don't need a password. In fact, we don't even need to get into the server room. That's the other thing I like, is where I tell people, look, I just need a place to plug in. And if you don't want me in your server room, you don't have to let me in your server room. As long as I have a place where I can plug this cable in, I would prefer that it be to a switch, and I would prefer to be in the server room. But if I don't have that option, then I don't need it. I just need one place to plug in. So that's the second thing that kind of puts them at ease, is that we don't have to go tramping into their server room. Some customers are kind of funny about that. So I like to put them at ease. The other part of that, where I tell people, look, we don't have to, go around your network. You don't have to see every station, is there's a couple of times in the past where I've had customers, prospects at the time, that said, hey, we want you to come in and look at our network, but we don't want anybody to know that you're there because they like the previous IT company, and we're going to ruffle some feathers if they see that somebody's in here poking around. So I can tell them, look, you and I would just go have a meeting in your office, and if you've got an extra port, we can plug in there. Nobody has to know what we're doing. So that's another thing that makes it, pretty calming to the customer, that we can do all of this and not, make a big fanfare announcement and, hey, we need to get on your computer, we need to run some scans. Doesn't need to happen. And the third thing that for me is a tip, and I don't know if it's going to be a tip for everybody else, but I can go in with a tool that is vendor neutral, in a sense where I don't have to come in and say that we're an HP shop, or we're a Dell shop, or we're Ubiquity, or we're this or that. You're asking us to come in and just simply do an assessment. You're asking us to come in and look at your environment. We want to know how many devices you have, how many servers, how many printers, how many desktops, what's your Wi-Fi like. So the fact that we can come in there, and it doesn't matter what you have, this tool will go out and find it, for the most part identify it, and that will give us all the information that we need to know. So that is another thing that I like about this tool. So those are the 3 tips in terms of how do you deal with customers that are afraid to have you come in and touch things and fear that you might break something. Well, if you tell them, look, I just have a tool, we're just going to plug it in, it's going to go out and scan, we don't have to log into anything, puts them at ease right away. So now, what did I do for Adam and his friends? So the first thing we talked about is getting into their network, and I brought in the Etherscope, and I brought in a Domotz box, and I'll explain why for each of those. But in terms of how long does it take, one of the big problems with doing a network audit or analysis is that sometimes it could take days. It could take a week. Most of the time, I used to schedule a full day where I need to get there and I need to hang out and I need to see what's going on, and I need to go and physically see servers and things like that. Well, with the Etherscope, I don't have to do that. In most cases, I can find out everything that I need to know in just a few minutes. But I do plan on, or I do at least tell them I'd like to stay for an hour or so that if it's a network that's busy and there's Wi-Fi devices that are coming and going, if we need to go around and, hey, I want you to just go around and make sure everything's on, it gives them time to go do that. I can run some speed tests at different times and calibrate my settings to match what they have if I need Wi-Fi passwords, if they want me to test that. If not, I'll just identify them and go with that. But the fact that I can do all that pretty quick. So if you're talking about doing a network audit for a prospect and letting them know that, hey, I can be in and out of there in 2 hours. Or if you're doing an audit for, like I did, for a friend and they need to know the price, you don't have to give them, $1,000, a $1,500, or $2,500 ticket price. For less than $1,000, we can go in and do an audit and be able to give you some documents after it's all over so that you can see exactly what we see. And that's what I did for my buddy Adam. In fact, I'm going to show you later. I gave them links to stuff down the road. But let me show you now what we did for the audit. And for those of you that are familiar with the Etherscope, you'll know and see exactly a lot of the stuff we're talking about. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, as you can see, it's off. So I'm going to turn it on. And you're going to see how fast we'll be able to do stuff. So I've got my cables plugged in. So I've got the cable up here. And if you're not watching live, I apologize. But at the top of the Etherscope, there is an Ethernet port that's what you're going to plug in to your switch or to your wall jack or whatever and start to browse the network. There's also a built-in Wi-Fi that will automatically go out and start discovering what your wireless network is like. And there's the NetAlly sound to tell you that it's on. So even if you don't plug in, it's going to be able to give you a wireless audit of all your SSIDs and stuff like that. Now, if you're watching live, you can see that there's a cable coming out of the side of the Etherscope. And if you're listening, again, I'll describe it the best I can. It's just a port on the side of the Etherscope. You can also plug that in. So in that case, you would need 2 ports where you're plugging this into if you're going to do what I'm going to do. But for the most part, you're never really going to do this on site. I'm doing it just so that I can show you what this looks like. So I'm actually going to turn on my VNC viewer, and I'm going to share this screen because I'm going to make it so that you can see what I'm doing without me trying to be some YouTuber and piece everything together. So here is my Etherscope. So there's the home page. Now, the first thing you'll notice is I've got a bunch of icons. Not all of these icons will show up when you first plug in or turn on your Etherscope, but there's tons of apps in there. And as you can see, here are some apps that I've downloaded, but we're just going to stick to the main screen. Now, you're always going to see on, no matter what device you get, the auto test, the ping, the capture, but the 2 I'm going to focus on tonight are going to be Discovery and Wi-Fi. So you can see that there's a green dot already on the Discovery because literally as soon as you plug this in, it goes to work. So I plugged this into my network, which is a pretty small network, but as you can see, it's already discovered 50 plus devices. Now, one of those devices is going to be the Etherscope, so you kind of have to make some adjustments for that. But as you can see, it is going out and it is defining all your desktops, all your switches. And it's looking at the Wi-Fi, and you can see the devices that I have there. The BCDR1 is a backup device. So it is going out, there's printers, and then also we'll look for anything that it can detect physically or that it can detect wirelessly. So you'll see that there's some unknown switches in here. Now, the beauty of the Etherscope is that if you have managed switches, you are going to be able to get so much information. If you don't have a managed switch, not so much, but you can at least still go out and get all the stuff you can do there. Now, what I did not show you, and I can't find a way, at least here, to zoom in, but at the top of the screen, it gives you all of the indicators of what it's doing on the network. And one of those buttons is a discovery button. And I don't think I can show you everything there, but there is, for instance, here, there's this discovery status. So as you're plugging in and just starting up, it's going to give you an approximation of whether it thinks it's got everything on the network. So my discovery status is at 100% now, and we have been on less than a couple of minutes. So you can see that basically I could probably unplug this and have 98, 99% of their network. One of the things that I did with Adam while I was just starting up is he was having a discussion with let's say the owner of the business, and there was a voice over IP phone in the server room next to where we were plugging stuff in. And Adam was trying to just pick up the phone and see what the IP address is, and he realized it was on a different subnet. And he said, "Oh, well, you have VLANs." And the person said, "No, we don't have VLANs. We tried to configure VLANs, but it didn't work." And so, of course, we were like, "Well, how are you on a different subnet?" And as I'm going through my device, I basically plugged into, or not plugged into, but I drilled down to, and you can do this with router switches, servers, printers, etc., so that you only see what you want to see. So if I just say I want to see switches, I can do that, and then I can go into a switch, and I can see that information about the switch, and everything is discoverable by SNMP. So I can get the switch name, I can tell which port that we are connected to that switch on, addresses, but I can see immediately, hey, there's 4 VLANs on this network. And so while I was there plugging in, I hadn't even started doing anything yet, and I helped Adam confirm to his prospect that there were, in fact, I think there were 7 VLANs for him. Now, apparently they weren't fully operational, because as we found out later that they weren't. These addresses were manually put into these devices, but VLANs were configured, and they had not pushed out the IP addresses from the DHCP server. So these are all things that the Etherscope helps you find. And if you're looking here, since we're here, if you have a managed switch, you can see where it shows. Let me go back into here, where it tells me that of the interfaces on that switch, 3 of them are up, 23 are down. So you can know pretty quickly what's going on with your switches. And you can also see that that switch has been up 6 weeks, 4 days, 6 hours, and 23 minutes. So of the things that happen in the Etherscope, the fact that all of this can be done in just a few minutes, and let me just give you a rundown of the things that it can do in about a minute. It can scan up to 1,024 IP addresses. It can determine device types. You can use SNMP to look at router and switch tables. So I showed you in that switch that I can go through and look at interfaces and see what's up, see what's down. There's even more in terms of utilization. I can look at wired and wireless discovery. I mentioned that. You can discover switch port connectivity. You can find bad subnet masks, and that we did while we were there. And then last, you can identify ports with errors. So those are all things that can be done in just a matter of minutes. So if you've got a prospect that you need to figure stuff out pretty quickly, this is what's going to help you do that. If you're doing what I'm doing for another MSP or another IT professional, and you're helping them do a discovery audit, then you can help them map out the network and get all the information that they need. So I'm going to click on the second tab here of Wi-Fi. And the reason I'm doing that is because a lot of people don't realize what's connected to their network through their Wi-Fi. So as you can see, the first screen that I pull up is literally just giving you an overview of utilization and overlap. So if you've got people that are complaining about their Wi-Fi access or the speeds or connectivity, you'll see right here that there is a utilization, a retry percentage, the number of access points, and the number of clients that are currently not only on your network that you're connected to. And again, this is, you don't have to be connected. This is going to see this with or without the password. Now, you're not going to see the names of clients and stuff like that, but you're going to see a good bit of information. for instance, you're going to see all of the SSIDs that are roaming the airspace for your client. So at my office here, and I'm in the new space in my office, so I am actually closer to my neighbors, which is they are a tile in something place, flooring place. If you remember, if you've listened to the show before, we had a tattoo parlor over here. So I'm in the space where we finally got the tattoo people kicked out, and a tile and stone paver place moved in behind us. So that is their access point. But you see, it's in terms of signal strength, it's only 1 decibel meter better than our ruckus that is on the other side there. So we've got both our MB systems and our MB systems, yes. And then these other networks, the ones that are right there are also ones that we've configured so that when we need to set up iPads and notebooks and stuff, I can just immediately connect to the Wi-Fi and have it pre-configured before it gets to the client. Somebody's got an Xfinity modem, and then some more SSID. So this is what's just in the airspace and identified without me having to ask for a password or anything like that. So those are the types of things you can get. You can get the number of access points and the number of clients. So those are all good things there. Now, all of that can be done pretty quickly. And like I said, yeah, if you just want to go in and get the number of devices, that's a good start for you. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And I am now going to go into the Domote screen because I want to show why I took both a NetAlly tool and the Domotz box. And so give me just a second here while I switch this over. If you're listening by audio, I apologize, but this is why you want to come and watch live here. So I am going to bring up, actually that's not what I wanted, that is the link live. We'll do that a little bit later, but I want to bring up this other screen, which is my Domotz dashboard. So another reason that I will show up, I will bring a box, the little small Domotz box. So I can attach that as well. So if I've got multiple places where I can plug in devices, I can do this. And before I go on, I want to make sure I answer questions in the chat. Keith has asked, are you familiar with Ubiquity's Android app, Wi-Fi Man? And the short answer is yes. How does that compare, and why spend money on the physical tool? So to answer that question quickly, to go back to the Etherscope, the Wi-Fi Man is only going to get you that Wi-Fi stuff. And it will do a good job. It'll give you your Wi-Fi signal strength. It will give you some other stuff. In fact, I have that. I don't have it on my phone. I think I have it on my iPad. That I will use that for some quick and dirty. Nope, I do have it on my phone. So I have it on there. I can, get some information there. You can do speed tests there and all of that. And you can do some discovery. So the Wi-Fi Man will go out and do some discovery. It will do some basic device discovery as well. It'll tell you if you've got iPhones or printers. It'll give you names if it's connected to the wireless with the password and stuff. So yeah, the Wi-Fi Man will do a lot of that. The reason I like this is because it is an all-in-one tool that I can do so much more with the Wi-Fi there. And as I mentioned, I'm not going too much into that tonight, but that would be another show, Keith. But thank you for asking. So I did want to, let me change the screen here. So this is my Domotz portal, and the reason I'm showing mine again is to give you an idea of what you can do. So in addition to the NetAlly tool, you can also throw a Domotz box on there, and it'll do a lot of the same things. It will give you all of the devices that are on the network. It will show you what's online. In a lot of cases, it will actually use your DNS information to identify other stuff. But the other things I like on here is you can print out not only the network performance, you can, obviously get your IP information. You can do some route analysis if you want to. You can do the speed test. If you're able to leave your Domotz box on site, you can see if there's downtime. So, for instance, on May 12th at 3:45 a.m., my network went down, and I can tell you exactly what that was. That was a Windows update on my server that caused disruption on the network. So if you can leave this device on site, because you're not going to leave the Etherscope on site, it's too much money. But the Domotz box you can leave on site, and you can get the speed tests that'll run periodically. So if a customer or a prospect is complaining, hey, our network speeds are not what they're supposed to, you can get a historical look. Let's say even if it's a week, you can get an average of what their download and upload speeds are, if their pings are good, and represent all that. The other thing that I liked with this is that you can do a very quick network topology. So this is a very good map of the topology of my network. So my internet that comes in, it actually puts the speed on there. You're not going to be able to see this. I apologize. Blow up a couple of things here. I know you're going to see that, but don't try to blow up my IP address. It tells me, yes, I am a Sonic Wall shop, and you see I've got a Sonic Wall TZ270 there. And we have a 24-port Netgear switch. The reason I have that is there because we got that from a client. It was a part PoE switch, so I'm using that. And then it shows the rest of the network out there. Dataway port switch, which is also connected to an open mesh Wi-Fi device. There's another 8-port switch. There is an Arachnus switch. There's my Ruckus. This is a Zyzel switch that we're testing, and then some phones we've got out there, and then some additional devices. So this is something that you can, if you have access to a screen that you can look at this stuff, you can get a quick look at your network topology. And you can also do the same thing with Domotz, where if you're looking at device types, and you can group by type and by name or IP address or last access. So the things that we've got on here, so if I were to scroll down to our switches, we can go right into, and actually we'll go into this one here, and we can not only connect to it, see the history and stuff, but we can get into the interfaces, and we can see something's connected on that device. We can see what the current upload, download is up on that. There's my workstation. It's doing nothing right now because that's on the other side of the building. But then we've got another 27 devices behind this port. And I can pull up interface info, and I can look at the network, and I can see the utilization there on that port. I can see if there's any errors on that port, any discarded packets. And all of this is with the Domotz box. And I can see right now that this is port 9. It's got PoE on it, and there's your current, and it's got nothing for PoE consumption. I think it's just one phone on there. And then there's my outbound and inbound traffic. So these are all things that I like to do in conjunction with the Etherscope, that I can get this information. And a lot of times it's just to validate what information I got. And I can use the two and consolidate all of the things in there. Now there's other things in here that I'm not going to go into. But the one thing I like is at the end of your audit, you can go in and create a report, and you can simply hit send now. And actually I'm going to add in my Marvin at IT Business podcast.com address. Add that. I simply select that, and I can determine if I want to send just the agent info and status, connection history, WAN performance, speed test, blah, blah, blah. I hit send now, and it's going to send a report. Now, this report is for the last 30 days. And one of the things that you can do for this, and I'm thinking beyond the audit now, this is for after you've gotten your customer or you're wanting to do this with an existing customer. Every 30 days, on the first of the month, you can get a report that will show you and your customers what's actually happened over the last 30 days. So let me now go and log in. And I should share a different screen so that you can see. I'm going to go in and open up the report, and I can show you exactly what that is. So I'm just going to do this window here so you can see. And this is how the report comes. So basically it's a PDF, and you can change these names, I think, but there's my logo that the customer or client will get. Agent information. I put the address on there so that they'll know where it is. Total devices, anything new. So I've had 9 new devices in the last month. I've got 14 devices that I've deemed important. My status is online. Here's my network performance. I've had 1 disconnect, which I told you about and you saw. And my average download and upload speed and latency over the last month. It's so Comcastic here. And then here's my important devices. And I can tell if I've got alerts configured. So if I want to know that something's down or something's wrong, I get an alert. Gives me uptimes of all those devices. And then other devices. And those are the multiple pages there. So if you're doing a network audit, even though the report says the last 30 days, if you're only doing an audit for an hour or 2, you're going to have all of this information in there that you can have in a report format that you can send to the people that are doing the audit, or you can send to the prospect and say, this is what I found in your network. This is why we're going to charge you for all these devices, because they're there. A lot of times owners don't know that they have, 15 printers instead of 10. They don't know that they've got, 6 notebooks that are on their network all the time. They don't realize that they've got so many Wi-Fi devices. And these are all things that we need to charge for, and because we're going to be asked to support them. So why not get that information up front, know what you're dealing with, and you've only had to invest an hour or so of your time. So that is such a great thing. All right, before we go back to my next step, let's pull up another question. Lady Di asks, does either tool have a feature that lets you dig deeper to identify a device that is showing unknown? So the short answer to that is it depends. And let me actually pull back up my Etherscope, and then I can show you exactly what I mean by that. So a lot of times they're going to have a device that comes up and says unknown, but it's going to give you some information that you can kind of determine what that is. So let me go back to the Etherscope, and I'm going to go back into Discovery. And let's go into, let's say, a device that shows up here as unknown. Let me clear the filter. And go back to all devices. Now, here's an example. So a lot of times you'll just get an IP address. But I know by looking at that, the MAC tells me that this is my Domotz box with the MAC address and IP address. So that's one way that I can determine what that is. Here's a device that's only an IP address, but you can see by the MAC discovery, it's a Snap AV device. So you can get an idea from there that obviously it's either a switch or a router. In this case, the only thing I have that's Snap AV on my network is switches. Now, you may not know that if you're going into an unknown environment, but it helps. Here, for instance, another IP address. Now, the other thing that is great about the Etherscope is that if you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see that every device has a picture, especially if it knows kind of what it is. So this address at 67.240 has a little Wi-Fi looking device. So I know that that's a wireless something. And then I look over on the right side where it has the MAC information, Ruckus Wi-Fi. Now that could be the name, that could be whatever. So that'll help you too. Datto 8 port, you see has the switch icon and then open mesh there. Now in terms of these unknown switches, no, you're not going to be able to know exactly what they are, but you know that a switch is there, which means that it's probably an unmanaged. And yes, I do have some unmanaged switches in my environment. And the main reason is there are some things that I connect from time to time that I don't really need to worry about, but I will just, in a quick fix, I've got some 5-port switches laying around. So this particular switch is actually next to the domain controller, and this is another device. And I think I've got, I have some R-Hub devices that are plugged in over there. And if we scroll down some more, so this gives you an idea. So I've got a few unmanaged switches in here. And actually, this is one I'm connected to now. In order to do this demonstration for you in the live show, I've got an 8-port switch up here, and these 4 devices are connected to that switch. And this is a new switch. It's not properly configured. So that's going to show up as an unknown switch. The reason that this was beneficial, and I think in Adam's case, it helped him because he knew that there were switches there. And we identified, I believe, 12 switches that were managed switches, and we knew what we were. But I think there were 7 or 8 unknown switches that he at least knew they're there. Now, having to go find them is a different battle. Now, in some cases, if you're able to do a trace route on a device, for instance, if I want to do a trace route to my domain controller, I can do that. What's called path analysis here. So this is something, again, you're not going to get this all-in-one stuff with just any tool. Now, here's what's going to happen is the first switch, because we unknown, it's going to say unknown. The Etherscope is going to bypass that and go look beyond there. And here's the next switch in the line. And I'm going in port 1 and out port 11. And this is, I think this is a new switch in my network that I don't know. Here's the 3rd switch. And then another unknown switch, because that's the one I told you that I've got the R-Hub device connected to in my domain controller. That you're going to ask me weird questions, Mark. Why is your domain controller in a different area than your managed switch? Well, this is an office under construction. Let's just say that. So that being said, so those are all the things that between the Etherscope and the Domotz box, that here we are, we are less than an hour, and I've been able to show you the majority of my network in just a few short minutes. Now, obviously, I've explained a lot of stuff here. You wouldn't be doing that with your customer. So that's kind of how that goes. So now I'm going to go back and answer another question. How does the Domotz fare against Arachnus Oversea Pro? Good question, and I will be honest in the fact that I think the Domotz box is a little bit better in some areas, but I think the Oversea Pro is better in other areas. Now, the areas that I can give the Oversea Pro a positive thumbs up is in Oversea Pro, you can actually install your firmware updates, and you can do a little bit more with power management in the Oversea Pro than you can in the Domotz. Where the Domo shines is I think the Domotz does a better good job of just automatic discovery. Whereas the Oversea Pro, you actually have to add in all the devices. And you have to do it manually. You have to grab the the name, the serial number, and all of that, the MAC address and serial number, and put that into Oversea Pro before you can do some of that stuff. The Domotz will just do it and find it automatically. The Domotz is a little bit better in my mind, network-wise, because it's a little faster at alerting if a device has gone down. When I tested them both, because I did have Oversea Pro here for a long time, and I had a Domotz box, and I let them go at the same time. And the Domotz box, I don't want to say it's instantaneous, but it was, a mere seconds. Let's say anywhere from 3 to 30 seconds. If a device went down, the Domotz box would send me an alert. Whereas the Oversea Pro box would be up to 5 minutes sometimes. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've got a customer where something goes down and you can call them in under a minute and say, hey, something just happened at your network, what's going on? They get impressed. Before I got those boxes, I was using the built-in tools with my, at the time, SolarWinds. I think they had just switched from the other one to SolarWinds, and I was using their notification stuff, and those notifications could take 15, 20 minutes after a server went down. And again, in our world, maybe not a huge thing, because if a server goes down and the power's out, the customer already knows. But if a server's down and they don't know, and they're just like, I can't get to the network, I can't get to the network, and you can call faster, or before they realize it and say, hey, your server's down, let me start rolling a truck or working on it or doing whatever. So when you ask about the Domotz versus the Oversea Pro, they both have their pros and cons. I think they kind of serve some different purposes. The Oversea Pro, I think it's got a long way to go in terms of being a discovery and monitoring tool. But for what it does do well with its own devices, with its own switches, routers, access points, it manages those very well. You can remotely connect to them in both devices. The Oversea Pro, you can connect to those devices. I found that it was a little difficult to connect to other devices with the Oversea Pro, but with the Domotz box, I can connect to just about any device on the network remotely, as long as it is accessible either through port 80 or port 443, in some cases port 22. So being able to connect to printers, for say, when a customer calls up and says, hey, I'm having issues with the printer, and you can remote in and look at it and say, hey, you know what? You are out of ink. Do you not see that on your display? Oh, I didn't look. Well, there you go. Or you can see that the maintenance kit on HP printers needs to be done. You can remote in, see those things. Now, can you do that with other devices? Yeah. But in terms of what I use them for, and the fact that these things are up and running and I can do them pretty quickly, that's where I'm at. Okay, so I had mentioned the report that you can do with the Domotz. I also want to show you the reporting that you can do with the Etherscope. So for those that are watching the video, I'm going to do one more share here, and we are going to go to NetAlly's Link Live. And this is another thing that I think really was something that Adam liked, is because I could give him access to this. But before I talk about that, and if you're looking at the screen, you're not going to really be able to see everything. But when you're done with a discovery in the Etherscope, you can send that to Link Live. Now, a lot of the testing stuff that we do is automatic. So, but in terms of a full network discovery, you can actually send that. And I'm going to go, and I'm doing this now on my device, and I switch screens, so you're not actually watching me, but on the Etherscope, I am typing in my name of this discovery. And if I could type faster, it would be done already without mistakes. And today is I'm going to actually put the date in. So the day is 5/18/22. And these are all things that help me And I can actually change the name if I want to. I should have done this. Instead of naming it that, I'm going to change the discovery up here. I'm going to have it be the today's date, and I'm going to write the words discovery in here. So now I've done that, I've saved it, and up to analysis. So as you're watching the screen here, you can pretty much see that these are all my previous things that I have saved up to Link Live. And this is free, by the way. All you need to do is create an account and register a device, and you can see all my devices here. But this tab here, and we can go over Link Live at another time, but I just want to show you, here is my discovery that I just did today. And we can go into the analysis tab. And here is all of the devices that were detected by the Etherscope. And it gives even more information here that you could not see in the Etherscope. So not only does it give you the IP address and the MAC, but I can go in and start to see much more information on each of these devices. Even the Wi-Fi devices, I can go in and look at the SSID information. I can see IP addresses of clients that are connected. There's our test out to Google. These unknown switches, I can tell what's connected to them. So at least you can see through an unmanaged switch and see what's there. Here is my sonic wall, statically configured. And there's a VLAN that's configured through there and some other stuff there. So all of these things are now up in the cloud, and I can do a lot of things that I want. I can even filter. So if I just want to see, for instance, I detected a 50 subnet, which is probably my neighbor. But if I know that I've got multiple subnets and I only want to see what's on this subnet, I can filter that out so that that's all that I can see. If I just want to look at switches, I can filter that out. So here's my 5 switches that I have, and I can go through and look at those things. But here's the sweet part about all that. As part of this analysis, I was able to give Adam access to this topology. Now, the one thing about this is that we could not print this out for him. You can save this in a Visio format, but neither of us had Visio. But to be able to give him this so that I can have him go in, and I don't have to do anything. I just basically create a link, and he has access to it. But he can go in and look at the topology of the network, and he can, dial in to specific devices and see a lot of the same things that we were seeing before. And again, this actually is my neighbor's stuff. So we're looking at his Ring doorbells and all of that, that the Etherscope went out and found. But up here, these are all my devices. So here's my Ruckus, and here are the clients to there. And I can, like I said, drill down to each of these here and see all of that stuff. So we go back to the analysis and say I'm done, and the point is I want to create a report for him. So I'm actually going to cancel what I was doing there. Actually, I think this is not where I can do that. But here's where I was going to also show you. So share album. So let's say that I've done my analysis and I just want to share this link out. If you're wondering, I don't want them to see all my Etherscope stuff, all my link runner stuff, all of this. You don't have to. All I'm doing is sharing this album. So let's say I'm going to create this as the IT Business Podcast album for 5/18/22. So I just share this out, title it Network Discovery. And I can determine, do I want them to see it just for 24 hours, 3 days, a week, 4 weeks? So if I want to say, hey, I want you to, have access to this, here, I'm going to give you a week to look at it. I create this link, and I'm going to go back over to my email, and let me send this to myself so that you can see what they would see. So I'm going to send it to Marvin at itbusinesspodcast.com. Discovery link. And post the link in there. And if you listen carefully, and I'm changing that there. And let's go to my email. So that's the report that we did earlier. And let me go back now and share the link live again. Actually, no, I'm going to share. Maybe I spelled my name wrong. Actually, it might take a couple minutes. I may have been a little too quick with my typing. So that, link, copy, and which one I'm going to go to this one. There's my link, send. And go back into my email, and there it is there. So I'm going to share this screen here now so you can see what the customer would see. So in their email, they get this, they get the link, they click on the link, and it literally goes to Link Live, and it only shows the analysis information that I've given them access to. So in this case, you're not giving them access to everything, because you can see if you go and look for files, or you look for AirMapper, or you try to look for other things, they're not going to see it. They're only going to get what you've shown them access to. So from here, they go into analysis, and they have all the discovery information that you've provided to them. If you go back to the analysis and you click on topology, and again, this is what I told you that my friend Adam loved, is he could go in and look at the topology of how everything was connected in the network. And technically, I didn't even have to send him a report. I just sent him this, and he could also see what else was connected, and he's got access. And he's only got access for the amount of time that I want him to have access to. So that's what you can do for your client. So that is pretty much my recent network discovery audit that I did, and some of the things that I found exciting to do and be able to charge for. And this was helping a friend of mine hopefully get a new client. And we'll see how they do. They'll let me know. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. And if you have more questions, we will, for those of you that are watching live, we'll continue afterwards with the live chat. But if you have other questions, if you're listening or watching the replay, just go to itbusinesspodcast.com, send me a note, an email. You can actually click on the microphone device on the right-hand side of the page. You can send me an audio message and just say, hey, I had a question about this, or hey, you explained this wrong. Why don't you correct yourself? Or such and such does it better. What do you think about that? Just do that, and we'll, of course, keep going with the conversation. Listen, I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. This is my way of doing it, and It's just a thought process to give you guys an idea of what you can do with a combination of these tools. So that'll be great. So before we end off, our Florida Man story of the day. In the news with Florida Man. The title of this topic, and boy, I had a bunch to choose from, but this is the one that I decided on. Florida Man in ape mask used sledgehammer to rob laundromat. So this happened at a place called Englewood, Florida. This is close to Orlando, which I will be there. Actually, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be in Lakeland, and I'll be there next week for a podcast conference. But this is the story that happened there yesterday. A Florida man was arrested Tuesday for using a sledgehammer to steal over $800 from a laundromat. The Charlotte County Sheriff's Office said around 10:45 on May 8th, Michael Justin Rowe and Taylor Marie Farrell went into a laundromat. Pictures show Rowe was wearing an ape mask and holding a sledgehammer. He used the sledgehammer to smash a coin change machine, taking about $800 from it. Meanwhile, in video not yet released by Sheriff's Office, because you know if there was the video, I'd show it, Farrell can be heard yelling, "We gotta go." And Farrell is the Taylor lady that was with him. "You've been in here too long." Before the pair drove off in a blue Mercury Marquis. Deputies found Farrell on May 11th after she dyed her hair blue. She confessed to the crime and identified Rowe, and he was found to be the registered owner of the getaway vehicle. Both are being held at the Charlotte County Jail on several charges, including grand theft property, more than $750 but less than $5,000, and criminal mischief, more than $1,000 in damage. So that is your Florida story for the day, and that is our show for this May the 18th, 2022. Next week, so I'm going to say that my original plans were to not have a show because I'm going to be leaving the next day to a conference called PodFest. And some of you don't know that I've been, working on my podcasting thing and trying to make it a little bit better, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm going up to Orlando for PodFest. I'm going up Thursday. The conference is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm going to miss most of Thursday, but I will be there for that. But I think there might be a surprise that I will be doing an impromptu show. So normally I would say, we'll see you next time, and I talk to you about who the guest is and stuff, but I don't know exactly what is happening, but I think I have a surprise. So we might be able to see you here next week, same time, same channel. And that's going to do it for this episode of the IT Business Podcast. Thank you all for joining. On behalf of my good friend Amy, I bid you all a wonderful evening. And that's going to do it until next time. And until then, holla.